The ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel glittered beneath hundreds of crystal lights as Daniel Reed stood quietly near the entrance, holding the hand of his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. At 32, Daniel was already the CEO of a rapidly growing technology company. But unlike most executives in the room, he had arrived without an assistant, without a chauffeur, and without a team of lawyers surrounding him. He was a young single father who had built his company from a tiny apartment while raising Lily after losing his wife 3 years earlier. Tonight, he was supposed to sign the biggest deal of his life, a $900 million partnership with the Hawthorne family, one of the richest families in the country. Daniel wore a simple dark suit. Lily wore a little blue dress and held a stuffed rabbit against her chest. "Daddy," she whispered, looking around nervously, "are these people important?" Daniel smiled. "Everyone is important, sweetheart. Some people just have bigger houses." Lily giggled. They walked toward the private reception area, but before Daniel could reach the table, a tall man stepped in front of him. It was Richard Hawthorne, the billionaire patriarch. His eyes moved from Daniel to Lily. "You brought your daughter?" Daniel nodded politely. "My babysitter cancelled at the last minute. I hope you don't mind." Richard gave a cold laugh. "This is a business meeting, Mr. Reed. Not a family picnic." Daniel lowered his eyes. "I apologize. She'll stay beside me and won't disturb anyone." Richard walked away without answering. Lily squeezed her father's hand. "Did I do something wrong?" Daniel immediately knelt beside her. "No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong." Across the room, Richard's wife, Victoria, whispered something to her son, Alexander. They both glanced toward Daniel and laughed. Daniel pretended not to notice. Minutes later, the formal meeting began. Daniel presented his company's technology, financial projections, employment plans, and the long-term benefits of the partnership. His presentation was flawless. When he finished, the room became silent. Richard leaned back. "Impressive numbers." "Thank you," Daniel replied. "But I have one concern." Daniel waited. "You." Daniel frowned slightly. Richard continued, "You're too young. You're inexperienced. And you're distracted." His eyes moved toward Lily, who was quietly coloring at a nearby table. A CEO who brings a child to a $900 million negotiation doesn't exactly inspire confidence. The room filled with uncomfortable laughter. Daniel's face remained calm. "I understand your concern." Victoria suddenly spoke. "Honestly, Richard, I don't understand why we're considering this. We could work with an established executive instead." Alexander smiled. "Exactly. Why give $900 million to a man who looks like he still needs permission to stay out late?" More laughter followed. Lily stopped coloring. She looked at her father. Daniel noticed. He walked over and gently covered her ears. "It's okay," he whispered. Then he returned to the table. "I came here because I believe this partnership could help thousands of people. I didn't come here to argue about my personal life." Richard shook his head. "Your personal life is part of the problem." Daniel slowly gathered his documents. "Then perhaps we should end the meeting." Everyone became silent. Richard stared at him. "You're walking away from $900 million?" Daniel looked at him calmly. "Yes." Alexander laughed. "You can't be serious." Daniel stood. "I am." Richard's expression hardened. "You spent years building this company. You know what this deal would mean." Daniel nodded. "It would mean everything financially." He looked toward Lily. "But not if the price is teaching my daughter that money gives people permission to humiliate others." The room fell completely silent. Daniel took Lily's hand. They walked toward the exit. But just before they reached the doors, Lily noticed an elderly woman sitting alone near the hallway. The woman looked pale and was struggling to breathe. "Daddy," Lily whispered, "that lady doesn't look okay." Daniel immediately stopped. He rushed over. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The woman shook her head. "My medication." Daniel called the hotel staff and asked them to contact emergency services. He stayed beside her until help arrived. Then he noticed something strange. The woman was wearing a Hawthorne family employee badge. Richard, who had followed Daniel to the hallway, recognized her. "That's Mrs. Evans. She's worked for our family for 28 years. Daniel looked at him. "She needs help. Someone should stay with her." Richard remained frozen. Then Lily stepped forward. "Daddy always says rich people can help more people because they have more." Richard looked at the little girl. Lily continued innocently, "Maybe being rich means you should be kind too." No one spoke. Those simple words hit Richard harder than any business argument. The ambulance arrived, and Mrs. Evans was taken to the hospital. Daniel was about to leave when Richard approached him. "Mr. Reed." Daniel turned. Richard looked unusually uncomfortable. "I owe you an apology." Daniel said nothing. "I humiliated you tonight because I thought success meant having power over people." He glanced toward Lily. "But your daughter reminded me what success is supposed to mean." Victoria and Alexander stood behind him, visibly embarrassed. Richard continued, "I want to reopen the deal." Daniel shook his head. "Not tonight." Richard nodded. "I understand." Daniel took Lily's hand. As they walked away, Lily looked up. "Daddy, did we lose $900 million? Daniel smiled. "Maybe. Are you sad?" Daniel squeezed her hand. "A little." She thought for a moment. "Are you still proud?" Daniel stopped walking. He knelt and hugged her. "More than ever." 3 months later, Daniel received a letter from Richard. The Hawthorne family had agreed to invest in his company, but with one condition. Daniel would create a foundation for children of single parents, funded jointly by both families. Daniel accepted. The first project provided free childcare, education, and emergency assistance to thousands of struggling families. At the foundation's opening ceremony, Richard stood beside Daniel and Lily. "This little girl taught me something I should have learned decades ago," Richard said before the crowd. "Money can build buildings. It can buy companies. It can create enormous power. But only kindness can make that power worth having." Lily smiled. Daniel looked at his daughter with tears in his eyes. The $900 million deal had almost become the greatest financial opportunity of his life. Instead, walking away from it became something far more valuable. It became the moment Daniel proved that a person could lose money and still win everything that truly mattered.